Hi third graders, Mrs. Hosbach's here again. We are about ready to start a new art project, and today I'm going to teach you how to draw a form. A form is a three-dimensional geometric shape. So we call it 3D sometimes, you've probably heard it that way. And it just means that it has three parts: width, length, and height. And I'm going to show you how to turn some simple shapes that are flat into forms that look three-dimensional. And then we're also going to talk about how we can have interesting lines coming out of those forms. And then next week, we're going to make it look like color is exploding out of those lines. I cannot wait to show you. So we're going to be calling these drawings color explosion drawings because we're going to make the color look like it's exploding out of our forms. We're going to start with some basic materials, just a pencil, an eraser, and a piece of paper to sketch down some ideas that might inspire you, and I'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the materials later on. If you want to go grab those, go get them now. In this project, we're going to be focusing on three elements of art, which are shape, form, and color, and two principles of art, which are balance and movement. And just to get your brain starting to think about form, here are some 3D geometric shapes, or what we call forms, that you might choose to use for your composition. So start thinking about maybe one you like the best, or maybe two you like the best that you think you might want to use in your artwork today. I hope you're excited to start our newest project. This one's called our color explosion drawing. Hopefully you remember that shapes are flat and forms are three-dimensional. First, we have a cube. A cube is a box-shaped object with 6 identical square surfaces. Next up, a cylinder. A cylinder is an object with 2 flat circular ends and 1 curved side. Next, we have a cone. A cone is an object with a flat circular base and a pointed top. A pyramid is an object with a square base and 4 triangular sides that meet up at the top and a point. Next, we have a sphere. A sphere is shaped like a ball and has no sides or angles. And last, we have a prism. A prism is an object with 2 identical ends and all flat sides. You will be choosing at least one form to include in your composition or your drawing. If you haven't done it yet, get your materials out. We definitely need a pencil and a sketch paper to jot down some ideas. And we want to be ready to roll so that we can start drawing right along with me as I'm showing you some good ideas and examples. And while you're at it, if you want to be completely ready, you may as well get a final drawing paper out and a marker for tracing. We won't need any color today. That will be for next week. So we talk about a form having 3 dimensions or being 3D. Those 3 dimensions are length, width, and height. Okay, so now let's talk about how to draw a form. And a form always starts with a shape. So you can see me drawing a rectangle here. Then we just have to figure out how to add a few extra lines to make it look three-dimensional. One way to make a flat shape look three-dimensional is by adding some diagonal lines going towards each other, connecting those diagonals with a parallel line, and then adding some vertical lines to go down inside of the shape to make it look like it's an open shape. You definitely want to start this project with a pencil and sketching lightly, because parts of these forms are going to need to be erased for the color explosion to be able to come out in a successful way. So make sure you're pushing lightly, and you may even want to do a few quick sketches in your sketchbook or on a scrap paper before you begin on your final nice drawing paper. Here you're going to see me use a different technique of creating a three-dimensional looking box. So instead of starting with the diagonal lines, I started with 2 vertical lines and then connected the front corners to the vertical lines with a diagonal, and then drew that connecting parallel line across the back. I'm going to do the same thing for this small box in the center here. So if you didn't catch it the first time, watch closely. Those 2 little vertical lines, then I connect it with the diagonal lines, and then that parallel line across the back. So I've already been thinking about composition by thinking about the sizes and placement of the boxes that I've been drawing. But now you're going to see me use a book as a straight edge to create what looks like a tabletop. So thinking about how the whole space is going to be arranged. So I'm going to create a straight line that goes behind and makes the boxes look like they're sitting on a table. There are so many different options for composition, so don't be limited to just a tabletop. Your box could be floating. It could be floating on a cloud. It could be upside down, and your color could be pouring out from it. Things could be growing out from it. So be creative and think about what you want your whole paper to look like. And if you feel like challenging yourself, you're not just limited to rectangles and squares to make into forms. You can really make any flat shape into a form. So if you're feeling like you want to push yourself and try something a little bit more challenging, think about what other shapes you could try to make into a form and sketch them out and see how it goes in your sketchbook first, and then decide which ones you would like to use in your artwork. Just like in this example, I decided to start with 2 cones on one end of my paper, and I'm making 3 cylinders on the opposite end of that paper. And I am going to try to make the color look like it's flowing in between the 5 forms, so maybe out of one form and into the other. So it looks like it's going across my paper. As you watch me draw, I hope that you're noticing that I'm erasing certain areas to make the different parts of where I'm going to add the color later look like they're going behind or in front of other parts, and that will add more interest to my overall composition. Once you're finished sketching out the layout of your composition, you have a few choices before we start adding color next week. You could go over all of your lines with pencil just a little darker, or you could trace with a black marker or a black pen and erase your pencil lines. As you're working today, don't forget to think about movement, trying to create movement with those lines that will eventually get color, making them move across your paper or out of that form in an interesting way. And also balance, like how you fill that whole space on your paper. We don't want a big empty spot or a spot that feels too filled up. So think about the whole paper and how it all works together. Now it's time to start doing a little quick sketching and planning to figure out how you want your paper to look, and then deciding on which forms you would like to use in your composition. You can even draw in the lines or the paths to show how the color is going to be exploding out of your form. Again, make sure to think about the whole paper. Once you have a composition that you like, then you can start tracing with a pen or with a marker to outline the edges and really make everything pop so that it's ready for color next week. Don't start adding color yet, because I've got some really cool ideas to share with you that might inspire you. I know 20 minutes is not a lot of time for directions and getting started, so you might not get all of this done today. If you want to be ready for color next week, you may want to work on this a little bit over the next week before we have art again. Okay, now let's talk about our must-haves for today. Your composition, final piece of artwork, must have at least one form. It can have more than one. I need you to think about your entire paper, your whole composition. So you start by thinking, is your paper vertical or horizontal? How large your form is? Where is it located on your paper? In the center, corner, middle, bottom, side, upside down? And then finally, how will your color explode from that form? So draw the path of the color explosion. Maybe there's more than one line, like some of my examples had. And think about a creative way of that color kind of exploding out of your form. And finally, press lightly, draw lightly with your pencil so that you can erase when you need to. If we want to make things look like they're coming in front of other objects or behind other objects or out of our forms, we're going to need to do a lot more erasing than we normally would. So it's super duper important to draw lightly so that you can do that erasing and you're not stuck staring at those eraser marks that drive me crazy. I'm sure they drive you crazy too. So press lightly. If you have no idea where to begin, begin with one form and do a couple quick sketches, and maybe that will get your brain warmed up and you'll come up with the perfect idea. And then once you have a great starting point, then move on to that final paper and you can start creating your composition. I'm going to do a few here for you just to give you some different ideas of how that could look. I know that 20 minutes goes by super fast and you may have not gotten all the steps done, but you have a whole week until you are ready for your next art class. So you've got some time to work on it and be ready for color. And if you are ready for color next week, the materials that you're gonna need for next time are kind of up to you. I want you to think about what material that you have the most variety of different colors of at home. Maybe it's markers, maybe it's crayons, maybe it's colored pencils. And I want you to use that as a guide for choosing the material that you're going to be using to add color to these color explosion drawings. So maybe start thinking about that and be ready to go for color next week. I can't wait to show you the next steps. And I hope you had fun today. Bye, guys.